say this just in case. You hear me just fine now? Okay. Presentation is Mayhem and Mistakes on Our Soil Health Adventure. We're going to those we were facing. 2013 is when I came onto Zog Jersey Farm full time. I'd been around since 2004, but 2013 I started to see the scope of what was going on. 2014 was a struggling year for us, and we'll get into all of that. So, we're starting here now. For people who. So why do you farm the way you farm, and why are you here? Go ahead.
We started all that cash. When you get there, don't do what I've done. You find Keith Vincent, he says, you do what Keith's doing, because he's already experienced some of that stuff.
Well, I hope you learn a few things from me, because I've made a lot of mistakes.
And these guys have watched the guys that they farm out, you have basin to the extent, and they probably found the good stuff and the bad stuff.
And we want to be better.
And we want to be better, yeah. Hopefully we all want to be a little better. Go ahead.
Because it's a good life, that's why. But it's a good life.
Well,
Why do I, the way I do it. The why I do it.
I kick my kids out of bed every morning at 6 o'clock. Right after school, I'm usually right there feeding cows or working on equipment. Kick them out to go feed cows. Pipe. My boys hide my tools. Love having them out there with me. Screwdrivers, though. We haven't put one through a tire yet, but we will one, sure. So, this is how. Oh, let me make myself a little bit more real quick. So, Zog Jersey Farm, we milk 260 cows. We have 250 acre site. We farm 400 total with everything. I'm Joseph Cann. I was born in Twin Falls, grew up in Cache Valley. I've milked almost every neighbor growing up. I could start probably 6 different milk barns. My parents dairy me 2005 until 2012, and I was involved in that. And then after I finished my master's degrees, I went to work with my father-in-law. So I have a bachelor's in dairy science, a master's in applied economics, MBA in food and agribusiness. Say there that I'm an agronomist, specialist. I can talk cows, biology, forward and backwards, and I've had to learn through the life of hard knocks everything I'm going to share with you today. This is me, 2013. Reed just bought that nice tractor, and I planted her good. Well, I could hit my head on that mirror, and normally that thing's way up in the air. But this is very common. In the fall, when we took silage off, when we got ready to go into winter, we would disc everything. In the spring, we pulled that old plow and we plowed and plowed. And then if we had left a lot of clumps for some reason, we'd disc it again. This field we would have just hit twice with the roller compactor and then planted. Once we finally got the seed in the ground, we would start fighting crusting. We'd chase wheel lines across fields, 4-hour sets to try and get that seedling out of the ground. We'd run the pivot multiple times trying to make sure the corn emerged. And once we got everything out of the ground, we started fighting weeds. We sprayed and cultivated and worked ground, and we loved it. I mean, I was the little kid that at the neighbor's fence line. If I wasn't on my dad's tractor or somebody's tractor, I was at the neighbor's fence line watching them farm, hoping they'd pick me up. And if they didn't pick me up, I was fine just standing there watching them turn the dirt. Like, we love to farm. We love to sit on those tractors until we didn't. In 2013, 2014, we were looking at the problems we were facing, and these are a few of them. High pH, it's pretty common for us. Really, almost every field is an 8+. Crusting, poor emergence of crops, poor plant health, yellowing plants. Our corn would come out of the ground, they'd turn all sorts of colors. I'm colorblind. If I can tell, it's bad. Poor stalk health. The corn stalks just fall over. And yields. We that started this journey. We had early embryonic death, and we'll talk a lot about it in a few slides. Here's one of my soil samples. So this is a few of our fields in 2017. So we started 2014. These are a few years down, a few years into our journey. You can see we have low organic matter, 1.3, 1.5%. Even on my established pastures, the second one, those pastures have been in for 20 years today. Only 1.5% organic matter on that. And we're in Lewiston, Andy Loam. It's pretty good dirt if you treat it. We're dairy. We put out a lot of potassium, a lot of calcium. A lot of phosphorus, a lot of potassium, P and K. Sodiums, though, we very high on our sodiums. Our base saturations, that bottom one's an 11. They should be 2s. Lots of sulfur. So at this point in time, we were putting out 200 to 300 pounds of sulfur per acre to try and mitigate that high pH, those high salts, and bring those into line so that we were freeing up our nutrients in our soils. This is one of our cornfields. Same day as I'm out cultivating it. On the left, that old 4240, the corn's up above the axle. It hits you above your belt. Here in this one, same cornfield, same day. It's to the front tires of the tractor. Probably 60% of the field would look like that, though. Just dead. If I took this picture the day after, 7 days after I planted at emergence, all those, they came out of the ground, they germinated, but then they died. High pH, high salts. And then because of that, we got early embryonic death in the dairy herd from vomotoxin. It's a mycotoxin, kind of like toxin coming out of corn. Embryonic loss in our dairy herd. Sick cows. At that time, we were milking 150 cows. I'd have 10 sick cows every day, different cows. Ruminations are off. Upset stomachs, weren't doing good, lethargic. Antibiotics weren't test, a bug going through the herd. We started finding mummies in her cows. Like we would actually be preg checking, we find a solidified mummy in there. And by, about Christmas, first of the year, 70 to 80% of it. So we called the nutritionist in, trying to figure out what was going on. We put in our corn silage, in our hay, and in our barley. Primarily the culprit was the barley. Started a toxin binder program to try and alleviate what we were feeding the cows. We began looking at cropping patterns. Why are we getting vomotoxin? Where is it? And we eventually had to pull the barley out of the dairy herd. We just couldn't bind up that much toxin. And we started feeding it to the heifers, and eventually I just discarded 40 tons of barley, which at the time was a lot. Today, any of that with prices, no matter how big I am. So we didn't know where to go. I called my local agronomist that we worked with. And he shrugged his shoulders and said, I don't know. I'm salts and pH, you have to deal with them. He wasn't equipped. He was equipped to sell me fertilizer and to kill weeds. And I say kind of. Good to begin with, but when my corn got this tall and died, there's no canopy. Those weeds came just fine again. We're putting our own weeds. I went to so 24, got a master's degree from USU, and I knew there's some pretty there. I knew some of the agronomists that I'd worked with a few. So I went down, I cornered one, and I started talking to him. He told me the mycotoxin growth was in the ensiling process. I told him he's full of crap. We ensiled that stuff perfect. We put it up, chop length right, packed it down, put an inoculant on it. Mycotoxins grow on the plant. They're molds. Molds that grow on the plant. This was on the farming side. He had no idea what to say about my high pH salts, low organic. Say we lived in northern Utah, high elevation, arid. We're not going to grow organic matter, no matter what I did. And I heard him say once in a crop extension meeting that any idiot could grow 25-ton corn silage and 6-ton hay. And I sat in the back and kind of thought, well, I'm not an idiot. At least I don't think I'm an idiot. I've got a couple pieces of paper that say I'm not an idiot. But I couldn't. Did you know there's a soil health extension agent at USU? I wouldn't know what he looked like. I called him twice a week for a few months. 3 or 4 phone messages left. I see his name on papers that are published, but he's never been out to my farm. I get a hold of him. Exception of him, I want to iterate that I still work with these people. Like that USU agronomist, he is phenomenal at killing weeds. I talk with him about my spraying procedures and what we're missing all the time. That's where he went to Purdue University. That's what he does. He kills weeds. And I work with my local agronomist because I need someone to kill on the sprayer. But they still bring value to my operation. I don't want to throw them under the bus too hard, but they weren't equipped to do what I was dealing with. So, exhausting those resources, we had to start talking to everyone we could find. Luckily, there was a dairy convention going on in Logan. I went to that, and I talked to all the vendors, just like we have in the room here. And I bumped into Ron Hansen. He's Sunshine Farming Products, and he was the first person that came to me and said, she didn't like it, but this brought results, same crop year. And I'm not putting a plug in for Ron or Adam. Adam's in the room here today, but the reason I bring these two gentlemen up is because we need a group. We need a support group. We need someone that we can talk to. And that's why I'm envious of what you guys have here today is I didn't have a soil health conference to go to. I knew I had problems. 70-80% of my herd open. We were on the brink of losing that dairy herd. If that would have went on for another year, we would have been done. And we had no idea. We always farmed, and it wasn't working for us anymore. Seeing what we're hearing, I know we're coming to the end of this conference, but I hope a couple people that you've connected with that you can, because that group is very important as you go forward. So at the beginning I came up with a couple assumptions, one was I needed to have 2 marketable crops or 2 forages off of every acre we owned. We didn't have any forage. We were struggling. We needed We need to feed high quality feed to feed those cows. And I own that ground. I don't own it, Reed owns it, but land's expensive in Lewiston today. I came to realize real quick that the sun shines in Cann Valley mid-March through November. My grass is green in my lawn. Why aren't my fields? You go March, mid-March through November, the sun is shining and we can be harvesting sunlight. And thirdly, I had to do what I could with what I have. I had to modify my equipment. I had to get creative on what I could do with what I. First step we started off is we started planting fall triticale, wheat, and barley, and this was purely driven off of the fact that triticale is a pretty dang in the vegetative state. The cows do really well on it. We plant that late October, November, chopped it in May, and then we go in and we'd farm like we always farmed. Good week farming that when we were supposed to be doing other things. Planted the corn. We started with 30 acres. Today, silage acres are planted. About this year, that's our. And primary reasons we needed the feed. So the next step is no-till. I didn't have a ground in May. Usually by the time we finish chopping triticale, first crop hay's on, I'm starting to breed cows. We don't breed heifer. Got to start herd. So in 2017, we did a small trial. As you can see, I don't have fancy equipment. I don't even take the blade off. So 2017. This is a hayfield that half of it died out. We burned it down and planted right into it. And then this picture's to triticale the day the chopper's out of the field. We pull that chopper comes out of the field, we start covering pit. I'm throwing the corn planter on, and I'm trying to get to the field before they're done in the pit. Here's that hayfield after it's come up out of the ground. You'll notice those rows are not straight. I didn't have GPS. Imagine planting into an 8-inch tall hayfield not with row markers. Last year, those rows are. We have a GPS unit in that tractor. Made do. Did not like chopping this field. It kept him awake. I did not like furrowing this field. It was a bugger. But we did what we could. And these are yellow. I know I'm colorblind. I can tell that corn's yellow. It was a wet spring. We saw some weird things but it's working out. Would do this again. Fill into that hay. So under current corn, no-till corn. In the fall, as soon as we take that corn off, we start hauling it. We clean out all of our corrals, we clean out all of our pits, we clean out all of our compost piles from the summer. We incorporate it. We used to deep rip it, run a disco, high-speed disc the last few years. And we thought we had to do that for compaction. Then we'd plant. We plant that triticale on the ground. Our target is May 20th. Sometimes it'd be the end of May before we and corn, and that was a problem. But we used to try for the 20th. It usually was the 1st of June though. We want to try for the 20th. Sorry. We plant that no-till corn, and while that quarter done, I'm turning the pivot on right behind me to get her out of the field before the pivot catches me. I only have a 6-row planter. I have a cow herd to take care of. So post-planting, before that seed is coming out of the ground, before that corn shoot's coming out, burning there, come in and desiccate all that triticale. Gives it a chance to green up, kind of poke back up after we've cut it. Today, one pass with high-speed disc. So observe changes. So this is what I'm seeing, this one practice on our farm. Health has improved. We no longer have discoloration of our plants. Tilling the corn, transpiring the water out of the ground instead of evaporating the water out of the ground. Plant health is improving. We're no longer crusty, become soft and malleable, and they're clumping together, and we have that little bit of stubble on the ground when I turn that pivot on. The trit's out of the ground in the fall, it's not going to crust. In the fall, we usually get a few rains in Cache Valley. And in the spring, it just doesn't crust anymore. Compaction is reduced. So, funny story about compaction. A few years ago, we were running out of feed one spring, and we started chopping some triticale off to feed heifers. I think by the time we cut first crop day, I had one bale of hay in the barn. And Rita was like, "Are we going to go buy some?" I said, "No, we're going to make it. I don't want to go buy hay." So we started chopping off the triticale, and we're a dairy. As soon as we have open ground, we start hauling manure. And we were leaving ruts. We were leaving 8-inch deep ruts through that triticale ground. And then the manure spread. Well, we got to go work that ground. We went in there with the chisel plow and worked it up, filled the ruts in. That fall, when we went to work, where I had just filled the corn into the trit and hadn't worked it, we'd fly through that 7 miles an hour with our ripper. We'd hit where I worked that triticale ground, we'd drop a gear. We'd go to where I hadn't had a cover crop, 4.5 miles an hour. Just bogging the tractor, working it. Where I have this triticale planted, we're no longer seeing the compaction. We're no longer seeing the detrimental effects of the corn plants. And you can feel it with that tillage. Fall 2021, we did no deep ripping. I don't think I need it. I have so we only have one pivot and it's quartered. One corner of the pivot has been a hayfield the last 5 years. And I wish I had a picture of this. The corn, where we have this rotation going on, looked like this corn. Nice cobs. We took that old hayfield out, planted the corn 2021. It was this tall. It was one row away. This tall, stunted, sickly looking hay. We had to give it extra nitrogen even though it came out of a hayfield. It was discoloring. And we walked out in that field. We were just kind of playing around, wanting to see what was going on in the dirt, see how the triticale was decomposing. And the triticale ground, we could shovel into the ground. 5 feet away, we were jumping on the shovel, trying to get it in the ground. And we had worked that hayfield. Compaction's going away. We don't deep ripper anymore. I will leave 4 or 5 inch deep ruts with this dump wagon as I'm chopping trit in the spring sometimes. And that no-till planter, I run my corn planter. It's not even a no-till planter. I run my corn planter right through those wheel tracks. Doesn't affect it. The corn's coming up just fine. You cannot see those wheel tracks in the cornfield. You can feel them as you're driving the truck, hauling the feed out in the fall. And that's partially why we're still running that joker once, but I'm only hitting it 1 inch, 2 inches, level that field back out. So the soil has become soft and mellow. We're deep ripping, one passing with the joker. It's become easy to powder. It's almost like dried out clay that you can hit with a disc and it just becomes powder. Well, we can do that with 2 passes on this stuff. It's so soft anymore. It's a drop. We're not changing much. pHs, when I pull my soil samples, we no longer find 9. Big enough sample size, but it looks like it's helped. Saying that we're water infiltration. Put about 1/4 of an inch to 1 inch out with our pivot at a time. We can do 2 inches now, and we don't have ponding. Are we still finding ruts with the pivot? Yeah, but that's corn. where that tractor sitting used to always come up. I'm harvesting 6-8 foot tall corn with good cob. We're moving in the right direction. Changing the way things work. Skipping gears a little, this is so we eating soybeans into our, because if I my ration. Backward. And then I furrowed it. Just 2 passes. We used the corn planter again, but I took corn out of one box, put soybeans in. So we had 16-inch corn with soybeans down the middle. Grain that we took out. Out of this field, these 4 cobs are what the field did, and these are what we put too many plants per acre out. We tried for 35,000 corn plants to the acre. That down to into the mid. We're no longer doing this. We can't anymore. So these were Roundup Ready soybeans, Roundup Ready corn, and we control the weeds pretty good. But I have to plant conventional corn now. We have to be non-GMO for our processor. I never went any farther with it. I had to do it again. Eating over the top of the cornfield. But where I did 60-inch corn, and we took a little hit on yield, when I turned my heifers out to eat over, ran through the field, took a bite of those soybeans, and those couple strips were gone first. So we won a little bit. We went to a farmer up in Raft River and walked through. Well, that's pretty slick. That's a good idea. I didn't have a good enough cultivator bar, so I started for a cultivator bar. I found this little big heavy bar. I found this Gandy box the year later, and we put it all together and thought, oh, we got it made now. And then the NRCS went out and bought an interseeder. I was like, thanks, guys. You could have. All right. Well, we ran it. We did it. And the reason that we're doing this is double crop them. I need to get that corn in the ground in May, 1st of May instead of the end of May. I need that extra 30 days in Cache Valley to that grain to dry down so I can make high moisture corn. So we do it that same day. Previous picture, that haze over the top of that little tractor's tires, it was tall corn. I like to hill corn tall. I have bad memories as a child of creeping through corn or furrowing corn, and so I didn't kill it. I like to hill it tall. Voice now. It was too tall. We had good emergence, but look how tall when we did it. To start with. And we'll talk about what I mean by to start with towards the end. So, this is almost the final thing. And this is one that I personally raised house for the last 20 years. When he moved to Lewis, it was planted some pasture mix. And who grazes? Anybody graze cattle on grass? You do on cover crops? On grass. What's the spring like? tall. Quality grass like. So good. So I got more grass than I know what to do with, and I'm trying to make milk. I need high quality feed. Come July, my cows are not wanting. They want to eat more in the bunk, and I'm losing my efficiency. They're still going out. I still like it. They're off the concrete, but well, in 2020 we started doing this. I think this is the second paddock we went into. There's 120 cows in that picture. Any of them jerseys. These are my turnips. You can just come off versus where we are. My daughter had trouble walking by immense amount of fertilizer. There's August 10th with the cows out. You can see again kind of what we've grazed. And then August 28th, and that's what we're going in on the second grazing. So it took us about to get through. And then we went. Okay. Here's the mix. We had clover, millet, grazing corn, sorghum, teff, Italian ryegrass, collards, buckwheat. Here's kind of the growth we had August 3rd again. Your collards and radishes, grazing corn. It grew pretty good. I mean, $38 to buy this mix. This is this year. So we went out earlier. Our plan was to get them out the 20th of July. These girls have been going out for about a week and a half on August. There's a video of them going out. These are my pregnant, fat, lick in 95-degree heat. I was worried about losing them out in there. Hoping they'd all come back in to be milked. I didn't lose somebody. We actually had a few that got left out there, and halfway through the milk, I look out and there's a cow sitting at the gate wanting to come in. I was like, oh, someone better go get her. But how many guys, what do cows want to do when it's that hot? They don't want to be clear out. They don't want to shade up. They want to be in my free stalls. They're walking a quarter of a mile to get to that amazing mix. So this year, we harvested 5 to 6 ton triticale before we planted the summer grazing mix. It's a warm season mix. In Cache Valley, we can have frost through Memorial Day, so we figured we'll grow a triticale crop first, put some manure out, and then we'll plant this. We jumped 5 pounds of milk on my late lactation cows per cow per day in 2020. And we fed about 1,000 pounds to 15 in the manger on 5 acres for a month. So between increased milk production and decreased feed costs in 2020 on 5 acres, we made $7,000 in our milk check. That was done in 5 degrees when everybody else is dropping milk production. This year, we did it on 12 acres. We extended our grazing period 3 weeks. We got out earlier. We were out into September. And then at the end of the year, I was looking at my haystack saying, I don't have any hay. I went out and I baled that. I got another 29 bales off of that 12-acre patch. That was 29 bales to get off that piece of ground. That's my poorest piece of ground I own. And we harvested the trit, grazed the cows for 6 weeks, and I baled it and took it all back. That's a success for me. That's something I can replicate too. And then this is the last little cover crop thing we have. It's just a boring RCS cover crop. We planted a bunch of barley this year because we weren't sure we'd have water for grain corn. When we took the barley off, we're a dairy, we hauled our manure out again. One pasture, not pulled up, planted a cover crop. That was October 10th. And October 24th, we turned our peppers out. They are dirty. They were glad to get out of that muddy corral. These are my confirmed pregnant heifers, Springer heifers. Far into the field. How many of you guys have cows when you open the gate? What do? They take off. They didn't get very far. So October 24th, we turned them out. They were out there. They're still out on that field. We haven't brought them in. That's where we
They don't want to come out. Rather just eat.
We winter them over on this field. It's a nice, high, sandy field that they do really well out there. They're still out there, but we did not feed them till the end of November. That was about 35, 40 head of springers. So mishap. These are the mistakes we've made. And the ones with asterisks, we'll talk a little bit more about. We'll go into them. Palmer amaranth, pigweed. We'll talk about that. That got exciting. No-tilled corn that failed. The chopper with the soybeans, that was fun. So remember that interseeding we did? Well, when we went to first, the chopper operator grabbed the wheel line and busted 4 wheels off the end with the hub. And that cover crop needed a drink after we get one. So we missed out on grazing a lot of that. We still turned the cows out. They still picked a lot. There was quite a bit, but there could have been a lot more if we had watered it and given it a few weeks. But yeah, that cover crop's going to need a drink in Cache Valley the end of August, beginning of September. This year when we planted our summer grazing mix for our milk cows, we hauled the manure out, and I mean, we're farmers. We still fall back onto our old habits sometimes. We took that joker out there and we ran that joker twice across it. I was busy at the dairy. I came back out the second pass and I walked down the field to kind of look, and I was like, oh crap. It was powdered. It was just so soft anymore that without intending to do it, we just completely obliviated this piece of ground. And Reed jumped out of the tractor and he walks over to me and goes, how are we going to not get that seed too deep in the ground? How are we going to keep it shallow? Because it was just soft. And we ended up pulling the seed tubes out of the drill and just letting wheels push it in. And we still got it too deep there. Some of it didn't come out of the ground. So we still fall back on our old ways. I mean, this year was the first year we didn't deep rip. But we're learning. We're hopefully making the changing so that we don't make these mistakes, but we still do. We used to not get that corn early enough in Cache Valley. We can have a frost, and I've seen multiple frosts the 1st of September. We have to have that corn, plan on having that corn matured by the 1st of September so that it can start drying down if we're going to make yearly. A few years and we didn't get that done. We didn't allow enough time. So we are targeting May 20th to have that trit off and open that window up for our main corn crop. We need that silage corn more than we need the triticale forage. We'll take a little less on the trit if we guarantee silage. You know what this is? Palm amaranth. You want to get USU, call them and say you have Palmer Amaranth. Go up that day. A few hours. What the heck is that? That's not supposed to be there. I've never seen that before. Got off and walked into the cornfield. This is where I drilled the soybeans. This is where I planted the soybeans with the corn. The thing had a stalk that thick around. It looked like a Christmas tree. It's wide at the bottom, tapered to the top. Had kind of like, I call it goose tongue. Had like a tongue-looking thing, fuzzy top at the top. Had no idea what it was. Dug it out of the ground, pulled all the roots out that I could, put it in a garbage sack. Went over to the neighbors. We started talking about it. We started looking online and figured out it was Palmer Amaranth. I was like, wow, that sounds horrible. Called Earl Creech at the university, and he was out there that day. All excited. They stood it up. They were taking pictures about it. Went around to all the crop schools in the state saying, hey, look what we found. We don't want this. Some idiot planted it. The soybeans came out of Weiner, Arkansas. And it was certified seed. But Palmer Amaranth's non-toxic. They didn't have to say on the label that it was in there. That thing will produce 1 million seeds a year, and in the South they say it's the one weed that will bankrupt a farmer. So luckily, we haven't seen any more. We ripped that one out pretty quick, but I haven't seen it back. But be careful where you're procuring your seeds from. I recommend use certified seeds. Find a dealer that's reputable, that knows where he's getting it from, that knows what he's doing. We had a gentleman come through, try and sell us hay seed one time, and it wasn't coated. It had no inoculant on it. Watch your seed. Watch what you're doing as you do this. We don't need extra weeds coming in that will cause more problems as we're doing this. We don't need train wrecks from, fly-by-night seed salesmen. So where I planted that soybean at 140,000 plants per population, that worked good. Those soybeans were tall, they were big, they were beautiful. I stunted the corn because I didn't get water on it that fast. The rest of the cornfield was fine. This little strip needed it. I didn't run the pivot. I think the pivot was broken at the time. Anyway, we went to, we have an old 3-row New Holland chopper with finger guides. I sit on the I had to do it. I love the smell. It smelled like fresh green vines as you'd walk through green bean kid. But it did not work with our chopping practices. Where we planted it with the corn planter down the rows, we collected those just fine. But where this was just through the grain drill, it did not work. This is a sorghum field, triticale field that we tried to no-till sorghum into. We just have a Great Plains end row drill. It's not a no-till drill. We upped the downforce pressure. We got the seed in the ground really well. It didn't come out of the ground. It didn't grow. We do know that we had problems. The germination of the seed was off. That planted the same seed at least got something. We got green belt, but something happened in this field. We don't. But we definitely got less out of it than we should have. But that was we got one cutting a triticale off of, and then nothing else. We hauled manure on it and planted hay that fall, but we needed the forage off of that field that year. The story of the line and not watering that beautiful stand of cover crop I had coming. So, we didn't do any ripping this year. I want the corn in the ground 25th after triticale. When you get that triticale off, you get that corn in the ground, so I have the window, the growing days to get that corn to mature. on the flip side, I need to get that triticale in the ground sooner than 10th, 15th of November like we have been. I need to tighten up my window of harvesting corn silage, manure application, and fall plant. Whether that's more economically getting that manure out or making the jump to a no-till drill so we don't have to even till that ground, which it needs to be a couple of factors. We need to be able to, and we can, but we need to tighten that window up. And then this year we're going to interseed cover crops into 80 acres of earlage so that I can graze my heifers on it as long as possible. That was the catalyst, the chaos I had 2013, 2014, and why we made this jump to start our practices. And I want to, you might say that no-till doesn't work, that breaking down that organic matter is a struggle. But this is the triticale stubble in my cornfield on August 5th. All those roots are already gone. I just grabbed that and pulled it right out. By the end of August, the microbes in the soil have cut that stubble off so that it's just chunks of straw. You'll just go out there, you'll grab that, and you'll pull it out of the ground. It's just little teeny tiny pieces of straw, however high I chop that, however high. The biology is eating that and recycling those nutrients that I'm leaving there. We're recycling our manure nutrients. We're making things work. And full spot. I mean, fighting some of those things, but if I can get away on the piece of ground that I have on my poor ground, you can do it on yours as well. That's what I have, and I'm more than willing to answer any questions, explain anything with anybody that's got anything. Salt and pH. They're low areas where the would pump, but we'd farm them and we'd plant them all at the same time, and it was the salt and the pH that'd kill them. So there is wireworm in those spots, but it's just we'd get the corn up, the wireworm would eat at it because it's low, but what would grow would turn yellow and be this tall and fall over and die, and it's just all the wireworms I think are there also because of what we were working the ground and giving it all the food it wanted. So we were building their habitat, not the habitat we wanted.
It was interesting. Joe had me come over this last fall. There was a conventional junker. There were no-till on the other side. Sitting at that pivot point, looking at that line, and we both test ourselves with our phones, getting our helmets out a little bit running. It truly was a big difference between that soil. I mean, you could walk over where we had trick stubble or no-till, and it was significantly different. You'd go over there where that conventional tillage happened, and man, it was like trying to shovel through concrete. It was eye-opening to me. It was an aha moment. The lights came on. Another time,
Right.
if I can,
I don't care. Let him talk all he wants.
there was a time that some manure got spread on some trick stubble behind tires.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was talking about, the ripping. Yeah.
And they just drilled right into it a little bit. All that was going to do. All out there.
So that.
In the spring, I thought a train wreck was coming down the track. I really did. I was concerned. And in the fall, I learned some things out there.
So yeah, that is a practice. That's when we take that trit off, we don't work that manure in the spring. We run the planter through it. I have to wash the planter, but the corn's coming up just fine. And we're blowing it out thin. We're using our side discharge, and we're keeping it as thin as possible so we're not creating any problems. And we put those cleaners down on the ground so that we move them out of the way. So I'm not trying to plant through clumps of whatever. But one point I'd like to make about the corn planter is it's just a Case Early Riser 1050 corn planter. The only modification I made to that, to no-till with it, is I put a spiked closing wheel on it. And that was just more to bust up the sidewall compaction that we used to face. And I think that in these high residue situations, a solid closing wheel disc wouldn't close as well. But that's the only modification I made to my corn planter. So.
I'm just curious, if this is a more practical approach that all the farmers and ranchers that I've talked to have started, like they had a financial situation or, they had to throw a bunch of stuff away because of some toxins. It doesn't seem like anybody came to you and said, you need to fix your soil. It's just been a happy accident that your soil's been fixed. Did anybody come to you and say, the problem is your soil health?
No, we had to find that. We had, that's what the story was. I went to the USU agronomist. I went to IFA Valleywide Bear River Co-op agronomy, and they didn't know what to say. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to fix it. They didn't know anything about soil health, and that's why I'm jealous for the opportunity everybody here has, is because we had nothing. We had to start from scratch. And we were just I make it sound like it happened quick. It was a few years there that we started building on things. We started making some changes.
When did you start this process?
So we started planting the triticale in 2014. But we did that because we didn't have the feed. And then we'd still go back in and conventionally till. And then we made the jump to no-till because I didn't have time. It wasn't a soil health benefit. It wasn't I'm fixing stuff. It was just the time factor and what I was seeing on the dairy. And that's why I'm jealous, is you guys have the opportunity to be able to point at something now and say, hey, this is what's wrong. I had no idea what was wrong. I knew the symptoms I was facing. I knew something was going on. But by golly, we farmed the same way Grandpa did, and why didn't Grandpa face it?
Explain if you're doing it without a no-till drill. You can still no-till drill without it doesn't have to be a no-till drill.
Right.
You just have to be able to run water across it or get it water, and you can still no-drill. Still drill with a normal drill all day long.
You got to get good seed to soil contact at the depth you want. So I'm still putting corn 2 inches in the ground. My Great Plains, that was a struggle. We've tried that a couple times. We need to get it. We do need to go to a no-till drill for our grain seeder.
Get started.
That's
Still get the moisture on there. You just have to watch it to be able to drill right.
yeah.
You can still do it.
Exactly, yeah. You can make this work with what you own today. You don't need to go buy a no-till drill. You don't need to go buy a new corn planter.
So what kind of grain things drill have you got? What series?
It's a 1300 Enduro. And it's got downforce springs on it. If the box up with it, and you can plant, but it's the closing system. Like if you get a little bit too much moisture, you're not closing the seed trenches around behind it. And it's got press wheels on it. But like the John Deere one's got a side press wheel, kind of like a corn planter, that packs that seed wall. So it can be done. And I did it with that sorghum field. I got it in the ground. I got it to the depth I wanted it. It was a seed issue, and
So typically, we got a place to eat down there, and you see that it didn't respond very well.
oats and alfalfa I would have thought would have come up fine.
But the water was an issue,
Okay.
and soil.
So yeah, like management, what we do with our equipment and what we're doing with these practices, we got to be watching. I tell my guys that I don't pay you to sit on a tractor all the time. The guys that are cleaning my crowds, they want to just sit on the tractor and clean the crowd. They don't want to get out and kick the crap out of the beds. They don't want to get out and pick up the twine string. Same with the guys running the tillage equipment. We got to be out of that tractor, looking at what we're doing, making sure when we start, we set that piece of equipment up just right so that it's going in the ground how we want it. And that's what makes the difference at the end. So it's a high-speed disc horse joker. So Case has a Pro Till, John Deere has one now. Everyone's putting one of these out. It's just a short disc. It's about this long, and we'll run at 10 to 12 miles an hour.
Because it kind of just blow up the surface a little bit.
So you can go deep with these things. You can go 5-6 inches deep. It's just the way it's designed. It's designed to hit it hard and fast. Grab the soil, flip it up. It's got a spring rolling basket on the back that drops the heavy stuff and leaves. And the faster you run it, the better it is. Reed and I used to go round and round and say, get that thing up to 14th, 15th gear. He's like, it's too fast. I can't farm that fast, 10, 12 miles an hour. I run the thing 14 miles an hour. And if I was conventionally tilled, and I get excited about tillage still, it left a beautiful seed bed. It just incorporates everything. But we're running it more now, just an inch, 2 inches deep, knock the ruts down so we're not bouncing over everything with the equipment, more for the operator in the seat than for the tillage practice. What? No, we do not. Farm in an old swamp, so they don't ground.
You grow alfalfa,
Yes.
how do you in alfalfa?
Yes, I have that picture of us no-tilling corn into that.
I mean, in alfalfa. Starting off with
No, we don't till that yet.
conventional tip.
That joker just to loosen up so we can get good seed to soil contact.
It seems like the problem with alfalfa, starting in alfalfa is you need that good seed, but you don't want to have a lot of trash
Right.
on the seed bed.
So I'm going to disagree with you a little bit there. The last hayfield I planted was into a corn stubble field. So we took earlage off, and I ran my joker across it in the fall twice. And I did that to knock down my ridges, my furrows. And then I planted my hay into it. And that spring was a very, very dry spring. I put that hay into the ground 1.5 inches deep to hit moisture. I have the most beautiful stand of hay you've ever seen. It's on a heavy piece of ground that I haven't tilled for a long time. The only tillage I do, is to knock down those furrows.
So you have a lot of trash.
I had a lot of trash. I picked up a lot of trash in my first cutting of hay. My cows sorted it out, but I
Drill it deep enough for seed soil.
I drilled it for moisture because I didn't want to go water it.
I mean, isn't the risk of drilling too deep? Is it?
And I sat there and I hummed and I hawed, but I farmed I call it our Fairview clay ground. Grew up farming that ground. We call it 3-hour ground, and it happens on Sunday afternoon when I'm in church. We got 3 hours of work. That's all you get. So I get better luck farming it the way I'm farming today than I ever have. And the neighbors are all cussing me because they want to know how I'm doing what I'm doing with that piece of ground. Adam will tell you that people are wondering what.
Crusting aspect of it,
Yeah,
because that ground will crust, I mean, you put water to it, and it just still up.
but we've got enough organic matter into it now, going corn on corn on corn, grain corn, and then we've gone into hay that we're not crusting. And it was soft. That top was just, we didn't go in that spring and work it. We did it twice in the fall, and then that spring I just drug the drill through it, and we worried about the weeds later. But there was a good inch, but it was soft. It was crumbly and soft, and we didn't get any rain. But I got it down, germinated, and that little hay seed, they found its way up through those cracks of that hay, of that field. So we went in with Raptor, I think. I'd have to look for sure, but I had the co-op come in and spray it. And some of the dandelions were big, and they didn't die out, but we hit it with Valpar this fall, and that took everything out. So I didn't have the best stand the first year, but I got it in the ground in the drought. I didn't have to water it, and I've got a beautiful stand going into next year.
What do you think you got with your salt problem? What was the number one thing you did?
Stopping the tillage and sulfur. So we get the salts. Anybody ever boil water too long? I'm not a very good cook. My wife's in the back, she'll pertain to that. I can mess up boiling. and underneath them, that's all their salt. So when we're tilling the ground, we're evaporating the moisture out, and it's leaving all those salts and stuff back. Today, we're transpiring the moisture out, and we're taking some of that salt out with our forages now. We're moving some of that out. We're also putting sulfur out. Sulfur is dealing with the pH, but it's also binding to those salts and it's flushing out through the soil profile. So it's a slow Doug. We've been building it for years, like 20, 30, 40, 50 years, however long they've been tilling that ground, we've been building those salts. It's going to take, my kids will still be dealing with it, but we're moving the needle. Anybody else? That was easy. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.